Hey guys, Dr. Mike Dusa, MTFU Longevity over 50. How are you? Even though we've got snow today, April 2nd here in Connecticut, it is springtime and summer is coming. What did I title this? Ripped Abs by the Summer. Let me tell you, depending upon the shape you're in right now, if you don't start now or really soon, probably ain't going to happen. Um, Working out to get ripped. Okay, everybody says it. Listen, it's very hard to really get ripped, especially if you get way out of shape like we used to back in the 80s and sometimes even now. Uh, just as a quick note before I get into my main reasons why people have a hard time getting ripped. My body weight, I'm at my best at around 190. I'm trying to get that up this year, but whether that happens or not, as long as I feel good and I look the way I want to look, that's fine. But if there is an off season for me, there really isn't. But let's say there is, like in the wintertime, I won't go any more than 5% above 190. So that's 9 or 10 pounds I'll gain, and I don't even like to gain that because when I come back down and lean up, it's a lot easier. It's a lot less painful. There's not a high metabolic cost. I do it slow. I do it correctly. I know my body. I lose very little, if any, lean mass. And my barometer with that, even though I use some mensurative techniques that I'll talk about in a second, is how I feel. Because I know when I start losing muscle, which we all know is the engine that provides energy in your body, I start feeling crappy. I reject that. I don't let that happen anymore in my life. So again, I try to stay in pretty good shape for me all the time. People have been asking me lately, "Hey, you doing a contest? You doing a contest?" I'm like, no. And some of them applaud me, like, "Wow, you getting ripped condition just to get in ripped condition." I go, "Yeah, man, that's life. That's my life. That to me is real." Now, don't get me wrong. I did contests and I love doing them, but at this stage of the game, it's that's not really an endeavor of utility for me. Really, it's just a challenge for me to see how good I can stay on a regular basis and not have to think about it too much. That to me is successful. So getting into these couple of things that I jotted down as far as people, the mistakes that are made, you'll be surprised. It's not the food. Most people know what to eat. Um, Most people know not to go to McDonald's. They know they got to have their lean meats, their fibrous vegetables, some fruits, the right carbohydrates, some healthy fats. People know that. Everybody likes to talk boldly about that, but very few practice these things. And in fact, even when they do so incorrectly based upon their stated goal. I only believe the goal when I see it actualized because, look, I've said in the past, I can say I'm Mr. Galaxy, but I'm not. So, my goal is my goal, and I try to get it, and you can get yours too. And right now we're talking about getting ripped. So, first thing I see is you have an incorrect calorie target. Now we've talked about basal metabolic rate. You can go online, and there's plenty of formulas. It's very easy. You punch in like 3 numbers and find out what your basal metabolic rate is, which is basically the number of calories you need just to stay alive. Even if you didn't do anything all day, you just sat there on the couch watching TV and you didn't even take your clicker to change the channel, and you didn't move, your body still needs a certain number of calories just to run everything and just to stay alive. And then we've got calories that go above that for you to endeavor and do your stuff during the day, your actions, whatever it might be. You might have a high labor job, you might have a desk job, just moving around, walking, talking, going up and down the stairs. You need more calories, obviously, than what your basal metabolic rate provides. Now, considering those numbers, what I like, my percentage that I think needs to be employed as far as a calorie deficit is about 15%, maybe 20% in some cases. That works for me. Okay, as far as the deficit I have to be at to lean up, and that does depend upon the condition I'm in at the time. But again, considering I don't get too far out of condition, maybe I get up to 15% body fat, and that's kind of high, and I want to get down to 8, 9, or 10. That's what I have to do, and I have to do it over time. So that's the number one thing. People don't do the right numbers. In fact, when I taught at the university here years ago, I had female male classes for a course I constructed called Nutrition and Fitness, and I had all the students take a diet inventory for a week and bring it back to me and fill out everything you ate and drank for a week. And the women in particular seem to be much more problematic than the men as far as, I don't want to call them eating disorders. I'm not a psychologist. Eating problems, I will say that. The girls were coming back with 400 or 500 calories consumed per day. Now, they may have thought they felt fine. In fact, they may have always felt crappy, and crappy is fine. Uh, Let me tell you, it's a good way to shut off your menstrual system and menstrual cycle. And also, you do that for a long enough time, it's going to be very hard to bear children when you're older. And these are some of the reasons why. Um, but and some kids would write down what I thought they wanted to see. The diet was like better than mine. The guy was like fat or whatever. It was hard to help them, but again, it was very hard to construct proper eating programs for these kids for a variety of reasons. I gave them information. Did they employ them? Some did, most didn't. But that's the number one thing as far as maintaining. I mean, again, 600 calories, 700 calories, that's insanity. Generally, a minimum of 1,200 for most people is what you need just to live, and then up and above and beyond that to do whatever it is that you're doing during the day. And so that's an issue. Numbers, people cut them drastically, they feel terrible, and they quit. And that's kind of like pretty much the de rigueur of what people do when they try to get in shape or get not even just get ripped, but just to lose some weight and maybe lower your blood pressure. Next thing that I see that people don't do is weigh their foods. And this is very important. The better shape your body gets in, if you're 30% body fat, you could pretty much cough off some fat. It's not as hard. The body is ready to release it because there's so much of it. Let's say you get down to where you only have to knock off 2% more body fat. Let's say it's like 10 pounds or 8 pounds or 7 pounds. Well, the body is more discerning in giving that up because there's not as much of it. So it becomes much more important the better shape you get in as far as following the numbers that are given to you by your trainer, your nutritionist, whoever may have put your program together for you. It's much more important to watch those numbers. And if they gave you a certain nutrient panel of proteins, carbohydrates, and fats, and they're all delegated by certain numbers, it's very important to come as close to that as possible. You do that by weighing. In my old nutrition clinic, I had one patient who she would take her oatmeal and weigh it, and she would to get the scale to level on the right. I don't know how many grams it was, whatever it was, a third of a cup. She would push each flake of oatmeal off the scale until it would balance correctly. Now, it's kind of OCD, but I'm going to tell you something. Such fastidiousness I'm usually averse to, but in this case, I don't think that's overly OCD. I think that's important that she did that. Can you do that for a lifetime? I don't think you should, because I don't think you have to. I think once you get in good shape and you know what you have to do, it's much easier on autopilot. You don't even have to think about it. But at least getting there and learning learning your body and learning what works for you. Yes, measuring, very important. Remember that narrow window that I talked about as far as your body being sensitive. It gets more and more sensitive the better shape you get in. So the more important that you weigh your nutrients, weigh your foods. Again, another thing that people do is 10 weeks ago I started a new program and I had to lose a little weight, not a lot. We dropped carbohydrates right away. So what happened? My scale weight went down by like 6 pounds in a week. Now, was that a fat loss of 6 pounds? Hell no. There's no way you can do that in a week. And I knew that. That was water. Carbohydrate has a high affinity for holding water. You lose the carbs, the water gets sucked out. But however, as you go on, the body equilibrates and regains some of that water. So the next week, my scale weight went back up to maybe 1 pound down from where it originally was. So, I gained 5 pounds back. Was that fat? No, it was just water. I understood that. I was still breaking down fat, which is the whole game. But a lot of people see that happen. They panic and they cut even more because they want that scale to go down at all costs. Now, I've said this. I don't like weight loss. I like fat loss. Weight loss can be caused by cancer, and that is not a good thing. And I don't say that in a joking way, but again, the seriousness of it, you're really looking to lose fat, not just weight. And you lose the right amount of fat. If the weight has to go down, it'll go down. But that mechanical manipulation of the scales needle, again, that's manufactured. None of it's real, and you're not going to get your goal, and you're going to end up unhappy. So the needle fluctuations, forget about those. Okay, you got to think long term, or at least short long term, in months, 1 month versus 3 months versus 6 months, so on and so forth. And you chip away and you get your goal that way. Um, Finally, monitoring of your loss. I like the mirror. Okay, if you're a person who does bodybuilding, fitness, figure, bikini, physique, board short, all these freaking classes now. But bottom line is, you're all on stage. None of the judges are going to jump up there with a scale or a tape measure. So again, the mirror ultimately is really maybe at the end point of you getting into peak form. It's the most important thing. But at the same time, me being a male and getting older at the age of 54, something happens with the trunk. As a younger man, I'd be in top shape at 31 inches of waistline. Now it's about 34. So one of the things I use, where is it? I get the tape measure right here. And I tape the waist. And I can really tell by how I feel, but I like to see it go down. So that's one thing I watch, because there's bloating issues and certain foods that cause bloating in my midsection anyhow. So I play around with that and try to get that to go down. That's number one. Number two, body fat mensuration. Now, I have a plastic caliper. I don't know where it is. It's useless in my opinion. You can use that. You can have somebody use a plastic caliper on you. And even if they're wrong and they have poor technique, as long as they're consistently wrong with poor technique, they will consistently show you the change in your body fat, and which is what you're really looking at. Because remember, forget about the actual number. But for the sake of completeness, in my clinic, I use Skindex, bioelectric impedance, and a hydrostatic water tank. I don't have any of that stuff anymore. So I go to a local facility and I undergo something called a DEXA scan, I'm sorry. And I have one of the reports right here. It's a body composition, lean balance, and fat distribution report, and it's done via X-ray, and it's supposedly the highest exactingness out of anything, the highest accuracy. And I have these done every month to watch the relative change in my body fat, and I think it's important that you monitor that as well. And if you don't, listen, there's really you may be surrounded by people who really aren't helpful, and they tell you look good no matter what. Those are the wrong people to be surrounded by. Surround yourself with some critics who are honest, and that's how you're going to get your goal. It's hard to change. You can do it. Most people won't. America is in sorry sagging shape, but you can still get ripped if you follow these basic rules. It's not big bones. It's not your thyroid gland. It's not an endocrine disorder. And if it is, those are easily corrected. In any event, try to stay on these things. And to your good health and leanness, I'm Dr. Mike Dusa, MTFU Longevity, and I'll talk to you again soon.